Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alan Kerr, and welcome to this morning's webinar, vTaaS IT webinar on automated testing. We're just going to give a couple of seconds for a few more people to come on to the webinar, and we'll be ready to go. Okay, so I think we're ready to go. So before we start, as we go along, if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask, then there should be a box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen that you can type the questions into, and given time at the end, we'll attempt to answer them just at the end, as I've said. So we're now ready to start, and thank you for attending. This is an introduction to vTaaS IT's e-business suite automated testing solution. Our agenda for today is going to be, I'll do a two-slide introduction on vTaaS IT, for those of you that don't know about vTaaS IT. We'll then do a general review of automated testing and vTaaS IT's approach to this. James Bendel, who is helping me on this, will then run a couple of demos of vTaaS, and that will take about 15 to 20 minutes. Then I'll summarize the benefits again of vTaaS, and then discuss finally the pricing model and go on to answer any questions that you may have. Again, time allowing. So, brief introduction to vTaaS IT. We are an Oracle-focused services company. We support a large number of e-business suite customers. We support about 40,000 end users on a day-to-day basis in about 25 countries around the world. And we handle in excess of about 100,000 tickets per year, and that's growing as we add more customers. In the 7 years of operation, excuse me, we've got 100% retention of our managed service customer base. And as can be seen from the final bullet on this slide, we've got a strong focus on quality and process. All of that, because we're providing those services to this customer base, has been instrumental in us deciding to develop an automated testing solution, because as we were supporting our customers, testing, end-user testing specifically, was causing us, as a service provider, a lot of issues. This is just a selection of some of our customers, and if I just pick out a few to give you an overview of them. The two top left, Nottingham City Council and Leicestershire County Council, have just combined together into a shared service organisation for their e-business suite solution. vTaaS IT are providing the full support for that e-business suite solution. The one just along from them, the C&C Group, you may not know the company name. I would imagine you will know the products, and that C&C Group own Magner Cider, Gamer Cider, and Tennent's Lager. We're also doing some work at the moment for Doosan, helping them implement e-business suite across their companies, including Babcock. And there's a few others down there. Element 6, part of the De Beer Diamond Company, they manufacture industrial diamonds. Demovo, part of, or used to be part of Ericsson, they're a venture capital buyout of Ericsson. And Wolseley, for example, who own the Plum Centre, Bath Centre, and Brain Centre. And they're currently doing an R12 re-implementation. So that was the whistle-stop tour and introduction to vTaaS IT. We're now going to move on to discussing what automated testing is, and so that you understand the abbreviation we're using, we've named our testing solution as vTaaS, which stands for vTaaS Testing as a Service. And I'm now going to go on and do an introduction on what that is, and in general testing issues. So And the reason for that is that getting users involved for smaller project testing, mod changes, etc. is often too difficult. In fact, it can even be difficult for the major projects. In general, and although I'm on the commercial side now, my background is I used to be the European IT director for Motorola, and another was the CIO for a large international telecoms company. And my experience was that when we were testing or carrying out projects, a third of the time was spent on design, a third on development, and a third on test. So lots of cost and money on that side. Another issue in user acceptance testing is small changes aren't fully tested. If you change a single program, you'll unit test that only. You won't necessarily carry out a full test of your entire system because it's too expensive to do it. If you are carrying out user acceptance testing, our experience in general is that it lacks a lot of structure, and that's if you can get the users to turn up. If they do turn up, they don't necessarily follow the scripts if they've got any. They get bored very quickly, start doing their own thing, and sometimes won't commit to the first test cycle and are going to be really reluctant, if not impossible, to get them back for the second and third test cycles. So this results in, if you're doing upgrades, delays in the upgrade because UAT hasn't been carried out, which gives you the risks that we're identifying there, unsupported software and missing out on new application features coming through. As we experience, if under testing happens, limited UAT, what we get is some of our customers may have told us, yeah, we've carried out the UAT, we go live over the weekend, and then the Monday morning we switch on the system in production, and our switchboard lights up like a Christmas tree, not just at this time of year, but at any time of year, based on the fact that UAT has really started on that Monday morning, i.e. the day they've gone live. Because UAT hasn't been carried out properly, you start to get major production issues happening in the live environment. Excuse me. The cost of this can far outweigh any of the costs that may have been associated, investing in doing the right thing. And then, as I've already mentioned, you've got mod testing for unit testing only, i.e. you changed a unit module and you're doing a unit test on that only. What then happens in my experience is we have what was called the butterfly effect, or the bit of spaghetti, where although you've unit tested the change and it looks okay, 3 days later something goes wrong somewhere else in the application, and you're looking at it and going, you know that the change you made 3 days ago has caused this issue somewhere else. Apologies. So, what's available out there in the market? There's lots of test tools available out there. All of them have got a high upfront cost and ongoing support cost. They're typically volume related and not functionally aware. And rarely, if ever, have they got any e-business suite alignment. You then, if you've bought these, these tools, you then have to make a significant investment to dedicate staff to the training software. You then need to train them on how, or training software, the testing software, you then need to train them on how to support that software, both from a technical perspective and, as we'll discuss later on, a hardening process. The people that are supporting your testing software, they need to be both technical and functionally aware. And then, once you've actually got it up and running, you need to allocate staff on an ongoing basis to run and manage this software. So basically you end up with a cost associated with the licensing, the hardware, and then probably the biggest cost of all is your own staff for managing and maintaining the software going forward. So let's compare vTaaS to these other automated testing tools. vTaaS is a service, it's not a product, and we highlight this as a key point within the solution that we're providing here. We've got 200 sample test scripts available, in fact over 200 sample test scripts available that can be used as a basis for a company to develop scripts on. If you have got your own scripts, then we can use those, but if not, we've got an existing over 200 scripts that can be used. So one customer that we're talking to just now doesn't have any testing scripts at all, and they're seeing the significant benefit of not only are they getting their scripts, the testing automated, but they're getting 200 templates for how they should be testing their system. vTaaS IT will run the test scripts on your behalf, and you'll actually see how that's done during the demo that James will run. And then from that, we provide the customers with documented results of the tests. In other words, you don't need to train or allocate staff to the testing, and vTaaS IT makes sure the tests are up to date and in sync with the developments that you carried out to your application, and it's always available for use. So how do we implement vTaaS, and how does it work? Well, as I've said already, you can either use your own test scripts, or we can supply vTaaS IT test scripts as a template. So someone sits down, either one of your users or one of our staff, and key the tests into the customer's test system. The keystrokes are then captured, and based on our previous experience and existing hardening of previous scripts, we then make sure that these scripts will always run by what we call hardening the scripts, and I think James will talk a wee bit more about that later on. Examples of hardening the scripts are things like when you run the test software will run much quicker than eBusiness Suite will. So what we have to do is we have to slow the test scripts down so that eBusiness Suite can keep up with it. So what we do is we wait for new screens to appear. Once the new screen has appeared, we'll then populate the data on that screen. If we allowed the system just to populate data into eBusiness Suite, we would find that we were populating data into fields that hadn't appeared on the screen yet. It also does things like for table scans, where we're looking for information on a table. eBusiness Suite will render only the rows in a screen for a specific screen, but it could well be that we're wanting to look in row 45, or column 45 rather, and what we need to do is we need to scroll along within the test software to identify that data and pull it out. So they're typical examples of the hardening. And I would say that the hardening of the scripts is probably the black art that's associated with this whole process. We also provide assistance with regards to creating the test data and making sure that that's repeatable so you can run the test multiple times. Test data is maintained within the spreadsheet, so it's easy to manage and load in. We then run, having developed the scripts, we'll then run the tests at your request, and the tests are recorded and played on vTaaS IT hardware. From a test frequency point of view, this will vary. We have on our existing customers some assumed volumes of testing. Testing during normal day-to-day running, volumes will be different to testing that you would be doing when you were carrying out, let's say, an R12 upgrade. Obviously, if you're doing an R12 upgrade, you're going to be carrying out significantly more testing than you would be if you were just normal day-to-day business. Online results are available, and we'll show you those during the demonstration, which can show passes and fails, error screens that come up, and it will also capture error screens where the data may not be represented correctly. For example, we may be printing a purchase order that should have a value of £156 on it, and the purchase order has £2,000 on it. So we also have reporting within the system, and basically that can show trends that are happening, areas of the system that may be causing problems over a period of time that you may want to update and change. And then we also develop a process with you where any changes you're making to the application, we will then reapply those within the testing software so that the testing software is in line with what your new changes would have be in the application. So in summary, vTaaS is a managed service. There are no upfront costs on it. It's got a functional e-business suite focus. It checks output against expected values, and it captures the error screens, both for system problems and, as I've just described, for unexpected data results. James will demonstrate the testing scheduling capability. We can schedule tests to run at any point in time or as frequently as possible, or as you would want. And then there's also the full reporting capability, which we'll show with a full archive of previous results. The test scripts that you have will be maintained as part of the overall service, and the testing supports various levels of system changes. We've talked a lot about, mod changes or upgrades or point releases, but it can also be handled for used for other things like database, operating system changes, etc. Just as an aside, we actually had one customer who were doing an upgrade, and they ran approximately about 100 tests every night for the 2 months prior to go live. And on go live, the biggest issues they had were a couple of password issues. So not only did it reduce the amount of effort from their point of view on user acceptance testing, but the key point was that when their upgrade went into production, it was extremely well received and extremely stable. Okay, we're now going to jump across, and if you bear with us for 2 minutes to run the demonstration. I think it will be that one. No, that thing's been running. The other one. Other one. Right. I don't know how to get that back up. Share it. Okay. Yep.
Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick video demo of a test run through our vTaaS system that I recorded the other day. So at the moment you can see the login page to our vTaaS application. So I'll just let that log on first. Next page we've come to is the summary page of the vTaaS system. This gives us an overview of the test jobs that are still to be run, currently running, jobs completed, and also a summary chart of all the passes and fails that have happened in a particular month or even a year. So we're now going to switch over to the Test tab, and this shows all of the test jobs that are currently scheduled in the system. So I'm just going to add a new job to the queue. So here we can see the list of available test scripts that are installed into the system, a number of e-business ones like create an invoice and apply a payment, create an invoice, apply a receipt, perform a chart or accounts inquiry. So I'll just let that continue so we can filter on all of the different tests that are available. And we're going to run the create invoice and apply payment test script. So a number of options pop up here. First, we can choose the version of a test script. There might be multiple versions, and also the data sets. Now, the data sets are the Excel spreadsheets which contain all of the data parameters that then get plugged into the test script. So in theory, you can have a different data set run against the test script each time if you want different data to be inputted into the system. So we set the start URL, and then we can choose whether to run the job immediately or scheduled in the future. So I'm just going through the different options here of how to schedule it, to repeat it every minute, hour, or on specific days. But for the purpose of the demo, we're going to submit the job to run immediately. So here we can see it's now on the job queue. The vTaaS system then goes and picks up the job and starts running it. Now at this point, this is all running behind the scenes, but for the purposes of the demo, I'm just bringing up the test node machine, which is actually going to run the test script so we can see what it's actually doing. So, as I said, this particular test is going to create an invoice and apply a payment to it. While that's running, I'll just explain a bit more about how we create the test scripts that Alan briefly covered earlier. So basically what we do is we come in and we have a look at the test scripts that you've currently got designed for your system. We make sure that they're vTaaS friendly in a way that they can be rerun in a repeatable manner. We might need to tweak some data or might need to tweak the script itself. Then what we do is we sit down with you, with a functional person or a number of functional people from your company, and we assist them in capturing the test script in the HP Quick Test software, which is the test engine for vTaaS. Once they've recorded the test script, we then take that back to our office and we put it through the hardening process. So, as Alan said, hardening includes adding checks to the script to make sure objects have appeared on the screen when we're expecting them, add any waits or loops to make sure the script doesn't overtake the e-business application. As part of the test scripts, you also put in, as well as just recording the steps, you put in checkpoints which allow the test script to check that certain values are on the page, certain pages open, and those are the checkpoints that then get reported out at the end. So part of our hardening process is to take each of the checkpoints and make sure that the report at the end of it reports on something meaningful to you. So we're just waiting now for the test to carry on. So as we can see, it's created an invoice and it's validating that. Now it's going to go and create the payment and apply against the invoice. So one of the things that the test does as well is it pulls out the dynamically created values out of the system. So at the beginning there we created an invoice which eBusiness then assigns a new invoice number to it. That then gets pulled out of the application into the test, and when we create the payment we can then plug that value back in, which I believe it's about to do just now. So there's the invoice number. So we found that invoice. We're now going to go through the concurrent jobs to process the payment. So this is another thing that part of our hardening process does. We add loops to wait for concurrent jobs to process, because obviously that's can take a variable amount of time depending on the time of day and whether the system's running quickly or not. So we add the loops to keep hitting the refresh data button and wait for the job to complete. We can then go into the logs and the output files created from the concurrent jobs, pull the text out, and pull values out of it. So in this case, we're actually going to be looking for the request ID that was put in the logs for the format and the other process as part of the payment. Now just going back into the invoice details and just validating that certain values are what it expects. And now we're going to go and look at the request jobs from the values it pulled out of that log file. So that's the first request it found. It finds that that's completed. So again, it's doing another check there to make sure the job completed successfully. It can open up logs and validate the values that are in those logs are what we expect. And here's the second request that it found in the log file. Again, checks it's completed and looks at the output. So that's now coming to the end of the test, so it's going to sign out of the application gracefully. The vTaaS software then processes the results file that QuickTest has created, collates all the results and puts them into the database so that we can then view those in a meaningful manner in the vTaaS web front end. So there we can see the job is now completed on the job queue. If we just go back to the summary screen, we can see that there is a path now appearing on the charts for that particular month. And now if we go and look at the results screen, so this is a traffic light screen containing all of the tests configured in the system, which we can then filter down and view the results. So there's AP001, which is the test we ran. If we drill down into the month and then into the day, and we can see the test and all the steps that the test processed and all of the values that it created. So for example, there's the invoice header was created with this number and certain request IDs. Okay, so that is an example of a test that passes. What I'm now going to show is one that fails, just so you can see what happens in that case. I'm just going to switch over to a different video. Okay, just make sure that you're seeing the right one. Okay, so this is the second demo then that's going to do a failure. So I've cleared out the results here so we don't see the previous success. So we're just going to go straight in now and submit a new test job. But what I'm going to do is select a different data set which I know is going to fail. So we're going to select the same test script that we actually ran in the first demonstration. But rather than use dataset 1 pass, I'm going to use dataset 1 fail. So again, set the start URL and create the job. So the job's now on the queue. vTaaS picks it up and starts running it. And then we'll switch over to the test node machine again, so we can watch what it does. So just for your own information, one of the reasons I'm showing a video here as well is the quick test. We built in some, as part of the hardening, some of the waits and delays, which sometimes wait quite a while because we want to give the e-business application a chance to catch up. So there are a lot of waits and delays. So doing a live demo, we would be sitting around and waiting for quite a long time. So that's one of the reasons why I did a video instead, so I could cut some of the delays out. So we would be sitting here for half a day or so. No, sorry, half a day was a bit of an exaggeration. So just waiting for the application to load. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and create a new invoice, but we're going to put an invalid supplier number in there. So we enter invalid. We try it. The test then is doing some checkpoints which might fail, but it's then going to try and continue as far as it can in the test, because it might manage to get to the end. In this particular case, it's not going to be able to save the invoice, so eventually it will have to completely fail the test and quit out of the e-business. So at this point, it's now realized it can't go any further, so it saves the results and shuts down the e-business and processes the results. So now back into the vTaaS web front end. If we now go and look at the summary screen again, we'll see the red mark on this chart shows that we have had a failed test. If we go to the results screen and drill into the result for this particular test script, and we can see the big red dots, and we expand out the results. So here we can see that step 3, a checkpoint first failed. So at this point it then takes a screenshot of what happened at that particular point in time. It then tried to continue a little bit further, but there were some other errors. So at each point it then took another screenshot just in case something had changed, and puts it in the report. And there's the final error that it captured in the bottom of the e-business application, where it said it was an invalid vendor name. So that shows a pass test and a failed test, and that's the sort of information we get out of the vTaaS system. So I'll pass back to Alan now, who will continue with the application, with the presentation, sorry.
Okay, thanks very much, James. To summarise the benefits that both James and myself have discussed. Basically, vTaaS reduces your application testing costs. The scripts are available for eBusiness Suite and can be used for any web-based front-end application. So although we've got the scripts available for eBusiness Suite, if you have other applications you want to test on that have got a web front end, vTaaS can be used for that as well. Reduces end user and IT involvement, hopefully we've explained that, and is repeatable for all levels of change, whether that's functional, major releases, point releases, database upgrades, hardware replacements, upgrades, etc. You just get the option to press a button and carry out a full regression test of your application. It's provided as a managed service, so the complex scripting is maintained on your behalf, which reduces and removes the testing resource requirements on your part. Minimises upfront investment. In fact, if you're doing this, it actually removes the upfront investment, and there's no software or hardware costs associated with it. And it also accelerates the benefits realization. We've had customers up and running on this within, from the point that they've signed on the dotted line, we've had a capability for them within 4 weeks. Now that obviously depends on what, the demand that we've got from customers and our ability to resource it, but we have had customers up and running on this within 4 weeks. And one of the key points from my perspective is that the improved application reliability, which is clearly a major benefit. So, moving on to discussing the pricing model. It's been commented that by people who presented this to at the eBusiness Suite conference and the J.D. Edwards conference that it's unusual to include pricing within these type of sessions. However, our experience was that potential customers assumed that vTaaS would be more expensive than possibly they could afford, and actually more expensive than it actually is. And then because they thought it was really expensive, they automatically didn't progress with it. Now that we're talking about pricing, we're getting a far higher level of interest, even though it was a higher level of interest previously. So we price vTaaS based on the number of tests scripts that you're likely to have. And a test is assumed to represent one activity, like entering a customer invoice or applying customer cash to an invoice. It includes all the licensing, as I said, all the hardware and services that we run the test software on. It excludes your test environment. However, if there was a need for you or you wanted, we can also include quoting for providing a separate test environment for you if you wished. We've assumed within the pricing that it allows for one major upgrade in a 3-year period. For example, a Release 12 upgrade. If you've already done a Release 12, then we'd probably be looking at our fairly recently and you weren't planning one for, say, the next 4 or 5 years, then we would look at a different pricing and a lower pricing model than this. But what we find is most customers are looking at doing a major release, see the benefit of this, and then use it subsequently after they've done the implementation. And what we're looking at is in the 200 test scripts at £20,000 per annum on a 3-year contract. And this is run and maintained on your behalf. The 200 test scripts is for the customers we've got. It's about the average. Most customers who are running, the core financials, etc. 200 test scripts is what we would expect to see customers taking, although it can vary. We have talked to one pharmaceutical company who literally run thousands of test scripts, and we're looking at a different pricing model for them. If you were to do a view, we looked at this and we thought, right, if you were to do this in-house, what would be the cost of doing this? Hardware cost in-house, £5,000, 10k for the testing software license, which actually our vTaaS is based on HP Quick Test, so there's a licensing cost in there. If you were to develop the wrapper that we put around it, we believe that would cost you about £100,000 to do that, and we've assumed an internal opportunity cost of £350 a day. But that £100,000 for the wrapper, that would just give you base functionality. It wouldn't give you anywhere near the complex functionality that's within vTaaS. You would then have to harden the scripts, and we've assumed 200 days for that at 70,000, and then running it for the 3 years from a support point of view, the internal opportunity cost for doing that. Then you've also got the saved IT test resource that you're not having to spend because you're doing this automatically, and the saved user testing resource as well, which comes to a very large, over 3 years, 310k. And for our example one, we're looking at a vTaaS cost in there of 60k per annum to do that. 60k over 3 years, sorry, £20,000 per annum. So the other thing that we're looking at doing is if you want, is a proof of concept, an on-site demonstration. And we're looking at that for those customers with a definite interest in it. Velos IT, James and or one of his colleagues would come on site for 1 to 2 days, and we would set up a demo to test 2 or 3, or to demonstrate 2 or 3, vTaaS test scripts against your e-business suite solution. A few customers we've done this with in the past, although they've had some interest, we've subsequently discovered that they've had limited, if no budget. So what we're doing now is we're initially charging for this on-site demonstration, which would be a cost of £1,200 plus expenses for the 2 days, so £600. However, if you then go ahead and buy vTaaS, we then deduct that off your first year cost. And the general comments we've had from customers that we've talked to about this is that they see that as a very fair and reasonable approach. Okay, so I think that's really it, and we're now going to move on to some questions, and we've got a few questions here. Let me just expand that out. I've just lost it. That's the questions go. Yeah, we've got, can the software be used to test customizations? First question in there. Yes, it can be used for customizations within the application, and it can even be used for testing other applications that may even interface into your e-business suite application. As long as we've got a web front end for it, we can do those testing. Another one here. Do you believe that vTaaS, your testing solution, can fully replace user acceptance testing? Our view would be no, not really. I wouldn't replace UAT 100%. As a user, really need to sign off on the testing, and doing that automated doesn't get their involvement in it. But vTaaS absolutely reduces the effort rather than getting the users involved on a first test cycle, then a second test cycle, then the third one, depending on how many test cycles you're planning, you get them involved in the latter test cycles, not the first ones up front. How do you handle testing of Oracle patches? Either you tell us what you believe is changing in the patches, and we'll change the software, the testing software, to allow for that. Or what we've actually had other customers doing is they apply the patches, we run the tests without changing anything in the testing scripts, and it highlights actually where the patches or any of the changes have actually been made because the test scripts fail on that basis. So it actually focuses people in on it. So I don't think there's, let me just scroll down. I don't think there's any more questions in there just now. So finally, oops, I can't get it to go to the next screen. There we go. The contact details, you've obviously had some emails from ourselves. I'll leave this up on the screen for a few minutes, but either contact myself, my mobile's there, email address is there, or Alan Sutherland, whose mobile number and email addresses are there as well. And if you're interested, we can have further discussions about how we can move this forward. So unless there's any other questions, I think that's all we have for today. I'd like to thank you for attendance, and I suppose wish you all a Merry Christmas. Thank you very much.